What's happening YouTube? Crusader coming at you with another video. Today we're going to do a race recap of this weekend's Formula 1 Grand Prix. And this weekend's race sees us in scorching heat in Qatar for the 2023 Qatar Grand Prix. And before the race, the FIA raised concerns and set an 18-lap tyre limit during the race, due to their concerns over the lifespan of the Pirelli tyres in the extreme conditions that they would be exposed to in Qatar during the race if it ended up running to its full length. Now, with an exciting qualifying and sprint race out of the way, it's time for the race. With Max lining up on pole with George and Lewis in second and third respectively, and Alonso, Leclerc and Piastri lining up behind them, the race was set to have an exciting start, despite some concerns over the tyre life on the incredibly hot circuit. And it's lights out and away we go, as Crofty would say. Max gets a great launch off the line, but George is right on his tail, and Lewis is right on his tail. Alonso chucks himself into position to block Leclerc as Leclerc and Norris fight it out for ideal position going into the corner. And then we get to turn 1. Max has the inside line with George right on his rear left wheel and Lewis just turns in. What was Lewis thinking? Do you think he was playing Forza and he just turned into a ghost? Was George meant to give up his position and just jump out of the way? Both the Mercedes spin out into the gravel, as the pack and Lewis's wheel ride off into the sunset. Somehow, in all the confusion, Oscar Pastry
It's Oscar Pastry!
manages to sneak his way up into P2 before the safety car comes out. Miraculously, George manages to rejoin at the back of the pack, and after a quick pit stop, the Mercedes machine's back in action on some new hards. Before the safety car comes in, Bottas, Magnussen, Stroll and Lawson come in for some new tyres, hoping that they'd be able to gain an advantage over the competition by being able to pit early under the safety car. When the safety car came back in at the end of lap 4, Verstappen was off and racing, quickly gaining a 2-second gap on Piastri behind him by lap 9. At the same time, George was storming his way through the pack, having already made his way back up into 11th place, after being in 14th at the safety car restart. By the next time some cars came into the pits on lap 12, George had made his way up to 7th thanks to his early pit stop by way of the incident with Lewis, and Max had stretched his gap out to 2.7 seconds, assuring everyone that this was going to be another one of those races. More pit stops followed the following lap. Piastri and Leclerc hoping to avoid the undercut from Alonso on the previous lap, catapulting George from 7th to 3rd by the time lap 13 had come to a close. As a George fanboy, this is looking like it was shaping up to be a good race after the rough start. The race rolled on, and another group of drivers came into the pits, reshuffling the order of the drivers and placing Albon in first when Max came into the pits on lap 18. Let's go Williams! Although Albon's lead was short-lived as he came into the pits on the following lap, it's still a huge moment for Williams fans everywhere, as this is probably as close as we're going to get to a podium for a long time. We've got to take him where you can get him, I guess. George continued to fight his way back through the pack, finding himself in P9 after another pit stop, and a tense battle with Gasly. More pit stops due to the extreme track conditions came on lap 26 when Piastri, Leclerc and Ocon came into the pits, sending George up into P4 with just under half of the race remaining. Max had extended his lead to 15 seconds over Alonso by this point, so he might as well have been out on another track racing different people. Lap 27 saw Norris dip by the pits, where the McLaren pit crew managed to pull off a 1.8 second stop, taking the record for fastest pit stop from Red Bull. Good job to those guys, seriously impressive. But things weren't all fun and games for Alonso, however, as he radioed his pit wall complaining about being cooked alive by his car, asking if he could get cooled down with some water during his stop. And in a moment reminiscent of Kimi not being allowed to have a drink, he did not get any water in his car. Clearly Aston Martin don't care about occupational health and safety. Track temps were still at 37 degrees on lap 29, despite it being nighttime in Qatar, which helps explain why the tyres were just melting off the cars, and why Alonso was looking to trade in his Aston Martin for an oven. More pit stops on lap 32 saw Perez and Albon slide back down the order into 12th and 13th respectively, on what would hopefully be their second of 3 pit stops for the race. Albon exited the pits and walked straight into a fierce battle with Magnussen and Tsunoda, and Tsunoda ended up triumphing and taking 14th from Albon. This was followed by Gorg dipping into the pits for the third of his 4 stops and him slipping down to P6 as a result, with Leclerc hot on his heels. Shortly after he came out of the pits, Alonso decided to go for a bit of a romp in the sand, giving Gorg P5 and Leclerc P6. By lap 35, Gorg had taken P4 and he was trying to close an 11-second gap to Norris, who was trying to catch up to his teammate Oscar Pastry, who was 6 seconds ahead of him, and in a rare turn of events, Pastry was only 6 seconds behind Max, so the race going right down to the wire was a real possibility. By lap 40, positions had stabilised in the top 6, with Verstappen leading Piastri, Norris, Russell, Leclerc and Alonso, with the top 6 separated by just 30 seconds. This lap saw Bottas, Stroll, Magnussen and Lawson rip into the pits for new tyres, sending them back to the back of the pack yet again, Tragedy struck on lap 41 when Logan Sargent decided to retire from the race due to heat stroke, which only serves to further illustrate how gross the heat must have been in Qatar on the weekend. Pastry entered the pits on lap 44 and made a 2-second pit stop, continuing the pit crew's night of outstanding form. Leclerc, Ocon and Perez followed Pastry into the pits on the same lap, but they came out a lot further down the grid than he did. On lap 45, Albon and Leclerc battled it out for 7th, with Leclerc ultimately walking away the victor in this instance. Norris dived into the pits, giving Gorg P2 with a 25-second gap from Max, and starting a battle for third between Norris and his teammate Pastry. But with Gorg still needing another stop to get him through the race, his chances of keeping P2 were extremely slim. Gorg surrendered his second place position on lap 51 when he retired his hard tyres, taking on a set of softs in the hope that he could get them warm enough and press his tyre advantage to make a charge for the podium before the final lap of the race. With the slow stop from Red Bull for Max on lap 52, the gap to Pastry in P2 was reduced to just 4 seconds, so a sprint to the finish was on. With Norris nipping at his heels, Piastri pushed on towards the checkered flag, slowly reducing the gap to Verstappen as the battles raged on throughout the rest of the pack. By lap 56, the gap to Verstappen had grown to 5 seconds for Pastry, with Norris just outside of DRS range as the lap ended. A very relaxed final lap for Max led to his 14th victory this year in F1, with Piastri and Norris taking P2 and P3 respectively. After clinching the Drivers' Championship during the sprint race, Verstappen moves his point total up to 433, with Perez in second on 224, and Lewis Hamilton in third with 194, gaining 0 after he binned it on turn 1. In the Constructors' Championship, Red Bull extends their lead even further, bringing their total to 657, Mercedes follows in second with 326, followed by Ferrari in third with 298. On the 21st of October, F1 returns to the Circuit of the Americas for the United States Grand Prix, so be sure to stay tuned to see what exciting developments happen next time the drivers hit the track. If you've managed to make it this far and you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like, a comment and a sub, and if you didn't, be sure to let me know down in the comments below. Until the next video, take it easy and have a good one.